Hi, this is Pamela Gropey Art, and today we are going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to show you how I put together boards to create a painting surface for different designs I do. I started out, if you had read my post on how I got started painting, you'll know that I started painting on wood. I didn't start painting on canvas until just about 3 or 4 years ago. So here is how I put together boards to create like a palette type background. And I have a post on the website already. This video is going to complement it. And let's get to cutting wood. First thing, I'm going to measure out the wood, and then I'm going to cut it. I won't have the sound on when I'm sawing because that'll just be annoying. So I'm going to get right to it. So this one is going to be made with 1x4s, which 1x4s are not actually 4 inches. They're more like 3.5, and a lot of times even that will vary. But I decided I wanted a sign that was about 18 inches, and 5 boards is close. 5 put together is close to 18 inches. So I'm going to cut the length of my pieces to 18 inches. But first, before I do that, I'm going to trim off the very end, because usually that's pretty rough and icky looking. So I'm going to trim off the very end, and then I'm going to cut boards that are 18 inches long. So first thing, I need to put on my ear protection and my eye protection, and then I'm going to get sawing. Well, first eyes, because I know I don't have eye protection. That is right. Let's see. Now I'm going to measure at 18 inches and make a mark. And I will cut on the outside edge of that mark. See, I'm lining up my saw blade to that. Make sure it's all flush to the gate. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to light it up by the board. And I just feel, I'm not too, yeah, it's flush right now. And then my pencil. And I double check. Just a hair off, it's okay. I'm going to use the top board. I'm always going to measure from the first board, because that way if I'm off at all, it'll just be very slight. So I stack these other boards somewhere else so I don't accidentally pick up the wrong one to measure with. And I started with a 1x4 that was 8 feet long. And it looks like I might get all 5 pieces out of it. So here are all my cut boards laid out on the table. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and, 5. Now number 5 is a little bit too long. I'm going to have to shave that down. And you see how they're lined up here. Move them over. Lined up. And now I take a measurement across, and that is 17¼ inches. So I will cut my 1x2s to 17 inches because I don't want them to overlap or show. So I'll go cut my 1x2s. I'll go cut my 1x2s, and I'll shave this one off. It's about, let me see, it's about the width of a saw blade, a little bit big more, but they're not all perfectly the same length. And I could shave them down, make them all perfectly the same length, but it's not that important to me. So I shaved down this board. Let's see if I did it a good job, because I didn't measure. Yep, perfect. And now these are the 1x2s, and I cut them even less. I cut them about 16¾ or 16½. So there we have those. We're going to line them up where we want them. And I need to pre-drill the holes for the screws. I'm going to put a screw in each one of these boards, and that will hold them all together. So I'll make sure I line them all up. But I'm going to get a scrap piece of wood, because when I pre-drill, I'm going to go through that, and I don't want to put holes in this. So I will go get a scrap piece of wood. So what I'm going to do, I've got these laid up on here. I'm just going to put a mark where the screw would be. And I forgot my wood glue, but I will get the wood glue because I want to glue it too, and then that helps it to stay in place. So this is where I'm going to pre-drill all my spots for the screws. So here is my piece of scrap wood. I'm just going to set it on there, and I'm going to pre-drill. Let me see if it went through. Yep, went through. And you see there's a hole in the wood. That's why I didn't want to do it on here. Now, to get the right size drill bit, you would hold it up to this and see if you could see the threads on each side of it. And I can. So that means I still have where it will grip the wood when you screw it in, but I've pre-drilled it so it won't split this wood. So that's how you gauge the size of your drill bit. And the screw size I went with, I think this is 1¼ because I didn't want it to come through both pieces. But when I screw in, you can see that it's still going to be kind of close. Yeah, I got about 1/8 inch, but that, I wanted it to engage well, but not go through to the other side. Well, my camera had shut off on me and I didn't realize it. I screwed these ones on, and now I'm ready to do this one. So first, I'm going to run a bead of glue along, and that just gives it added support. And then I'm going to come up a ways, and it's kind of pulling apart here. So I will screw my first screw in, and then when I go to do the next one, I'll pull it in towards it. So let me see, make sure this is as square as can be. Eyeballing it, doesn't have to be perfect. And then I'll do this. So let's see. And you know, all the boards are not always perfectly straight, so you're going to have to tweak some things and or use some extra tools. So I'm going to get a clamp to pull this together, and then I will continue to screw the support beam or little board on. So here is my clamp. This is an Irwin Quick Grip, and fortunately it was big enough, and I'm just clamping it on here, and I want this to pull together, and there it is, nice and snug. And now I can finish screwing my support crosspiece on. And I just screw all the screws all the way back. And now we release the clamp. Everything's snug and tight. And voila, our palette piece to paint on. And I think now I'll do a painting tutorial for it. Now I would sand it down. I would sand down the edges, sand down this smooth, and right here it's a rough spot with these knots. So I'll smooth it all down, and then I would seal it with my Varathane, because these knot holes will bleed through your paint and create dark spots. Now, you know, for rustic paintings, that's fine, but if you didn't want that, you need to seal these so that it lessens the chance of it coming through. Sometimes they're just impossible for it not to come through. So if we had darker colors, it wouldn't matter. If it's a very busy design, it wouldn't matter. But just know that knot holes can bleed through your painted pattern. So I'm just going to seal the board with some satin spar urethane. This is water-based. This is the outdoor. And I do that so the paints won't absorb too much in it unless you want that to happen. In some cases you would. It would lighten the paint, give it a transparent kind of effect. But I want this to be brighter. And also the urethane, this spar urethane, it's being an exterior, will make it where you could hang this outdoors. Now to do that, you have to get every surface, like the edges down here and up here, and around the sides and around the back. Get it all sealed all the way. That way water is less likely to be absorbed in the wood and cause it to warp. Now I have one of my paintings on my back deck hanging, and it's been out in the rain and what have you. So, and it's held up fine and it hasn't warped. But you really have to make sure you seal it. Now, for this first coat, I'm only going to do the one for the underneath to seal the wood. And that helps these knots here not to bleed through. I want to make sure I have good coverage over the knots, because they will amber the paint. As soon as like the sun hits it, not sap, what is that? The resin in that will come through the paint and cause dark spots. On rustic paintings, that's not a big deal, but you don't always want that to happen. So this helps that. It won't completely stop it if they're very resinous. This wood aged in my garage, so it's very dry, so it's less likely to happen. But just so you know, that's a possibility when painting on wood with knots. So I'm just going to let this dry, and then I will paint my painting on it. Now, if I was sealing this after it was painted for outdoor use, I would do 3 or 4 coats. I would put on a coat like this, let it dry. I would scuff it, and what I mean by scuff it is I would take a piece of brown paper, like from a brown grocery sack, and I would just run it over it, and that would lightly sand it and give it some tooth. Then I would do another coat, and then I would do the same thing. I would repeat that 3 or 4 times, and that produces a good seal for outdoor use. And like I said before, it's important you seal all edges of the wood so no water is absorbed anywhere, causing warping, and let it cure. It takes probably a good 2 weeks before it's cured, and that way you know it is safe then to hang outdoors. And I always would tell my customers who bought my signs, it is good to reseal them if they're outdoors once a year. So I would tell them, do the scuff sanding with your brown paper bag or craft paper, like this is craft paper down here, right here, and this here. And you scuff sand it, and then you do a coat. You could also get it in a spray can if you didn't want this much, big can. I get the big cans because I would do a lot of signs. But the spray cans, they could give it a good couple of coats after they have scuff sand it, and then that would rejuvenate it and make it last a lot longer. The sun and the weather is really hard on our signs and the paint, and this has UV protection in it, so it also would help the colors to stay vibrant. So I hope you enjoyed this video on how I put together boards to create palette type signs or painting surfaces. And you can see an example of different ones I've done on my How to Paint a Nest tutorial. I did it on wood put together like this. I did it on 1x6s put together and made a large palette surface. And then one of my lily paintings, my large lily, is done on wood, and it hangs out on my back deck. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe, hit the like button, and or if you have any suggestions of how to do this a different way, I would love to hear them.